Oh, hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Randolph. This is Mr. Declan Meyer, Secretary of Commerce. We want to welcome you to 12 Takes, the newest Next Up Coalition podcast. And so, basically, what we're going to do in 12 Takes every week, we'll have a video with a different member of the Next Up Coalition, I and a different member, and we will be talking about 12 things of the newest catastrophes in the United States. So, this weekend, Secretary Meyer and I have a list of great things going on in this country that we want you to be aware about, and we're wonderfully to get started. Declan, any first words before we get started?
I'm excited to be here.
All right. Tragically, I want to start with the issue of redrawings. Gerrymandering is a big issue in our country. And so we know from the last couple weeks that Texas has been redrawing their districts under the leadership of Greg Abbott. President Trump has called on him continuously for five representative seats in the House of Representatives for Congress, and he has successfully delivered those with a majority present in his quorum. And so now they have five Republican House seats. Declan, I just kind of want to ask you, what's going on, man? Like, what is going on? How is this continue to happen? And we'll kind of touch on Missouri in a bit. That's really controversial on what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of states in this country that are very heavily gerrymandered one way or another.
Yeah,
But the thing with those is those are always after either midterm elections or after a census. This is completely just this is new. This is not something that should be happening. We shouldn't be redrawing district lines right before an election cycle. Um, you know, this is just this is a common move that I wouldn't say that I necessarily expected from the Trump administration, but it's not super surprising.
I would
Um,
say, sure. Yeah.
yeah, I know when we were in DC, I might have either spoken with you or Nico, about just my belief that we should not have an electoral college or voting districts or anything like that. We should just have complete popular vote. But I mean, that's all I really have to say about it. This is just like it's just another you know, another part of the play in the
Uh,
comedy of
um,
the Americans.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and I think a lot of people misunderstand this because the common perception, right, like you touched on, is oh well, everyone gerrymanders. Democrats and Republicans do it, right? This is in the middle of a cycle, as you kind of discussed. There's a
Yeah.
10-year term, right, where independent committees redistrict lines for every state. This is completely unheard of for a state to step in the middle, actually straight in the middle, right? A 10-year process is 5 years into their new lines and say, hey, the president asked for seats, let's get them for him, right? This is uncalled and unheard of before. And so that kind of want to touch on one, California, but also Texas. Governor Newsom, the governor of California, has said, well, look, if the Trump administration is going to do this, we have to match fire with fire. And that's been a little bit of a controversy for some people. For others, it's been, hey, like we need to do this, right? Because for so long, since Trump was elected, Democrats have kind of backed off a little bit. Majority of Democrats, I'll say, have kind of said, you know what? Well, we can't control it. We don't have a majority. There's nothing we can do, right? We can inspire our voters to fight, but for us, we don't have a majority to do anything. Newsom is, completely eradicated that and said, hey, no, like we have to fight fire with fire, right? So he has passed a gerrymandering cycle, if you will. The difference is he wants to hand this right to the voters, right? So on November 4th, California voters will have an opportunity to say, hey, Texas wants 5 seats. All right, we'll take 5 seats as well. Um, so I kind of want to get your thoughts on California. Is Newsom's move right in your opinion, or do you think, like you said, we should just kind of? I mean, yes, it's a valid point, right? We shouldn't even have these problems in the first place. We could go straight to popular vote. That's a view by many, but specifically talking about California, what do you kind of feel about that?
Yeah, you know, California is one of those states where it could be very heavily gerrymandered, but the lawmakers there and the people there have honored the wishes of the American people in making it's not complete, no state is completely fair.
Yeah,
Gerrymandering's always going to exist in a system where we have voting districts, but it is one of the fair states, and I do agree with Governor Newsom. I know we've talked extensively about this, but for the Democrats, you can't just back down. This is, the election was just the start. We can't,
for sure.
play nice. We've tried playing nice. Um, you know, the Republican Party is willing to break the law and break, honor norms that the government has accepted and the people have accepted. So why shouldn't we?
For sure. Um, that is a great point. I think it's we've seen, as you mentioned, right? We've tried to say, okay, look, let's play by the rules. You guys play by the rules. It hasn't quite happened that way for the Democratic Party, and so now it's time to fight extensively. You're going to do this, we'll do it too, right? Keep the same energy is what we say in Georgia. So that leads me to Texas. No, not Texas. Excuse me, Missouri. This morning, actually, a report has come out that the governor of Missouri has called a special assembly in the Missouri State House, just as Abbott did. I think, let me go ahead and check. I don't want to give our viewers any false news. I want this to be completely. Yes. So I was correct on my first statement. It will be one seat. So the governor of Missouri, Mike Kehoe, said Friday the state's legislature will draw new congressional maps in a special session officially inserting the deep red state into one extra GOP seat. So as we saw with Texas, it was 5. With Missouri, it's 1. I think there are rumors now that Indiana might be next. This is just it's unacceptable, and I think it's going to continue to happen down the cycle. Especially in the Midwest, lower Midwest area, you see a lot of red states kind of discussing it. I'm really glad that Kentucky has Bashir in office right now because I'm pretty sure it would be similar in Kentucky if Bashir was not in office. Um, I don't even know. We're going in circles, right? It's Texas,
Yeah.
it's California, it's Missouri. We've got to figure something out because this is just unacceptable.
Yeah. Uh, when I was not really super into politics, um, used to have very points in my life with various people I've talked to, both, I have I have a couple of friends who are very far on the right who do buy into that kind of more MAGA stuff. They still don't believe in those voting districts and electoral college. It's
Yeah,
clear that from bipartisan standing, the American people, not the politicians, not the governors, not the people who hold public office, but the actual people that they represent, they don't want voting districts. They don't want electoral college. They want voting to be, they want the elections to be decided by the pure number of people who just voted for someone.
yeah,
That is the ultimate solution. And I really don't think we're gonna make any progress on gerrymandering back and forth, even though we may have norms or we have had norms in the past that have prevented it, at least to this extent. Um, unless we get rid of voting districts and electoral colleges, it's not gonna happen.
yeah. Well, I also want to touch on another point this morning, our second of 12. This morning, just as the Missouri news came out, about 5 to 10 minutes after, I got a notification that the Trump tariffs have been deemed illegal by a U.S. appellate court. They state that he bypassed his authority, wrongfully invoking an emergency law under international trade. So, for the past couple months, we've seen him have differentiating trade deals, with the EU, with France, with Great Britain. The Prime Minister of Great Britain was very, very excited that the deal was done. Japan, most of Asia, he literally, I saw a statistic that he has put tariffs on three-fourths of the world. Like, no joke, that's a literal statistic.
Including
Like,
the island
three-fourths of
of
the world has
France. Don't
tariffs
forget
from the
that.
Trump. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But they have now been deemed illegal by an appellate court. I don't think that this will have much impact. I mean, Trump has done a lot of illegal activities while he's been in office,
Yeah.
so I don't think this is going to really, I had a crime while I was in office. Like, I don't think it's really going to affect him. But from your point of view, what are we thinking tariffs wise? Like, I think it's obviously a conversation that the American people need to hear because a lot of people. This is my thing that bothers me, Declan. Is like a lot of people don't realize what a tariff is, right? Like,
They don't even
it's
know who pays them.
they don't even know who pays them. And it's crazy to me because growing up through middle school, like in middle school, I was taught this, right? It is like, I remember the teacher, I remember the class. It was literally a social studies class in 7th grade. Mr. Perillo, go and look him up. World Language Academy. He sat down and he told me, guys, we're going to learn about 3 different types of taxes: an embargo, a quota, and a tariff. We laid them out what they were. The people pay a tariff, right? It's not, oh, China, we're going to put a 200% tariff on China. China's going to be loading us up with money. You pay the tariffs, babes.
Yeah.
Like, you're the one paying the tariffs, right? So for the American people, what are we thinking?
Yeah. In early August, in late July, I was at a program in Yale, at Yale University, and I was learning about the law a bit. And one of the things just kind of just throw us out there with kind of like decisions is the fact that lower courts actually make most of our like kind of rulings and precedent.
Yeah,
Um, and that's an interesting thing. Like my first thought when I hear that about how this is like ruled illegal is I think the only way that it's going to stop him is if it goes to the Supreme Court. But then it seems like everyone has bent the knee to Donald Trump. So the Supreme Court bent the knee. They highest court in the land doesn't seem to matter anymore. So I, like you said, I just really don't think we can like anything can be done specifically to stop this. But I think just looking broader term with just stuff like this is we just have to educate the American people. They need to know what tariffs is. They need to know what embargoes, quotas,
yeah.
because if people were educated about this, they wouldn't have voted for him in the first place.
And that's a topic, right? It's like I hear so many people, and it's frustrating. I have to give them a little bit of grace because not everyone is educated as us, as sad as that is.
Yeah.
Um, but when people say, "I didn't vote for this,"
Yes, you did.
sorry to tell you, you did, you did, my bro. It's definitely something I think is definitely important. Is the topic of not immigration, excuse me, education, right? I think people need to be educated. When they're not educated, they don't see what's happening right in front of their eyes. And I want to touch on a point you said. Like it does seem like everyone is bending the knee to President Trump. Um, the Supreme Court, you touched on a little bit, like the case of Kilmar Garcia, right? They said, hey, you deported him illegally. You need to get him back. People don't realize it took 2 weeks, 2 weeks for Brego to come back. And I want to kind of talk about him because he had been retained upon his arrival in Baltimore. Um, Governor Moore kind of touched on it a little bit. But like, when is it going to stop? I saw a statistic the other day that said the Trump administration spent $500 million. Like, I know people who are out in the street starving. $500 million on new ice trucks for Secretary Noem. I've seen a video like a hype reel of like these big Ram trucks with ice and
Good
like
Lord.
protect the homeland, like screened black trucks. And I'm like, okay, go ahead and spend $500 million on some nice Ram protect the homeland trucks. That's great. Like you got to go out in style, go big or go home, right? But we've got bigger problems to address. Like it's crazy to me. So I want to touch on Abrego Garcia, kind of in the conversation of the Supreme Court that you talked about. Um, Immigration, right? Like we've always had a conversation about immigration in the sense of different presidents, different stances on immigration, whether it should be a more open border but with regulations, or a more strict border with even stricter regulations. From President Bush to President Obama, President Biden, President Trump, both of his terms. Um, what are we making of? Like, I think it would be a misquote for me to say that that this is a delicate conversation because when I start to talk about Republicans and MAGA, there is a very fine line, specifically in the South, because the Republicans, what used to be Bush Republicans, Cheney Republicans, I don't like. I don't hear from those people anymore, or if I do, I see Trump flags on their lawn. So it's more of loyalty to party, right, rather than loyalty to beliefs. So when I talk about, Republicans typically have this view, or Democrats typically have this view on immigration, which that does vary because there are different spectrums of left politics and right politics. I tend to shy away from saying that because the MAGA perception of immigration, they think this is okay, right? They think that this is justified. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Just to kind of quickly touch on, line between Republican and MAGA. At least, up north New Jersey, what I found is, at least with a lot of my close friends who are more of that Mitt Romney Republican, or I have some like kind of like more Bush Republicans, I even know a few Reagan Republicans who they they're not Republicans anymore. They completely switched over to Democrat because they were just
Appalled.
like
Yeah.
they were appalled, they were astonished by what the Trump administration has done. Um, Back on the immigration, I I don't know if we've talked about this before. Um, I I heard this like in a video maybe 7 or 8 months ago. But so if this is completely out of my ass, then oh well. But I found out that a lot of the issue with, at least under the Biden administration, a lot of the issue with uh, illegal immigration was with our asylum system. And and I think that's especially more true just as like a blanket statement for the past maybe 5 or 6 presidencies, where we don't really have a lot of a problem with people just crossing over the border straight up illegally. We had a lot of problem with people who came for asylum and they were either denied and then they came in illegally because, their lives were threatened. They had no way besides getting in here to escape literal death. Um, or people who would come in for asylum and then they just wouldn't show up for their court dates. Um, I think this my broader opinion on the border is we should have a strict border, but we should invite people in. If these are people who come in, they do the jobs that Americans don't want to do. We need these people. If someone is coming in, they want to come to our country, and they are an educated, they are a smart person, or if they just can do jobs that people don't want to do, we should have them here. We are a global superpower, and we used to be a global superpower because we let the smart people in. We let the people in who wanted to do the jobs that the people here don't want to do. Or we had people with there are some Americans who don't care to do you know, they don't care to do those high-end jobs of like they
Do
don't want to
better
be
stuff.
a lawyer, they don't want to do a lot of things that require a lot of education, and I understand that. I'm not particularly excited about going into 7 years of high to college either, saying $700,000 on that. Um, so there are people who will come in and will do those jobs. So
Yeah.
I just kind of went on a tangent there, but we need a, we shouldn't have people illegally crossing the border, but we should invite people in if they genuinely one need to be here for asylum reasons, or two, just because they would make better Americans, the people who are actually here.
Yeah. I want to specifically like just elaborate on that. Like our process, I think, is flawed. There's no doubt. I think you're right to say that it's been flawed under the last 4, 5, 6 presidencies. Um, I think that it's definitely a conversation for debate. I'll say for one, I live in a place with a lot of immigrant families: Mexican, Colombians, Venezuelans, Hondurans, El Salvadorians, right? Just Cubans, Puerto Ricans, everyone. I've grown up in the Latino community, so I love my Latino families. Um, I think that you are right. Right, I've known my best friend, um, his uncle, and his godfather were deported. So it has a personal resonance with me. A lot of the people who are here or are crossing are here because one, they are being persecuted, right? Countries in South America tend to have um, persecuting governments, most or some, I'll say, not all. Um, they can't survive, and there's no way to provide the lives that they need for their children. I just, before we move on, I want to ask and leave a lingering question to anyone who may be watching or anyone who eventually hears this podcast. Two questions, actually. The first, what would you do, right? Because we have a problem in America where we don't care until it bothers us, and it breaks my heart. We look around the world, we look at different parts of the country, right? Maybe even different parts of the country, as I touched on. Like, if it's not if you're in California and it's happening in Europe, oh, I'm fine. It won't get here. Oh, I'm in Florida. That's in Minnesota. Oh, it's not going to bother me, right? Because it's not affecting you. What happened to the days where we were courteous? What happened to the days when we cared about our neighbors, right? So, my question is firstly, what would you do if you were from Cuba? If you were from Venezuela? One of my best friends is from Venezuela, and his family came here because Maduro's government did not give them the resources to provide for their family, but also was persecuting people who disagree with them. If the American government was that way, which we're getting close, and we had to flee to another country, and the other country said, nope, you're American, we're not letting you in. Or their process was so flawed that they didn't have the numbers or the speciality to allow you to get in. Would you say, oh, okay, let's take our bags back to America? No. You best believe that you see your little 3-year-old girl or your 2-year-old son, you're like, no, they're going to have a better life than me. We need to get back to the days where we're courteous and care enough to say yes, right? If it doesn't work at first, let's make a way to make it happen. Let's find the resources to make it happen. For far too long, Congress has touched on things that are important but not necessary to get done, right? So that's my first question. Um, and then my second question is how, right? How? How do we become? I'll give you an example. I'm writing an essay. I'm sorry to get off point, but I'm writing an essay in my AP seminar class soon. And my research question is how can the US become a more inclusive society? Right? How can we become the greatest country in the world? Because this might be a biased standpoint, but America likes to portray to other nations that we are the greatest country in the world, right? I will say for one, I disagree with that statement. However, I do disagree. I do agree that this country is great for so many reasons, and we are the country of dreams and aspirations. Everyone across the world comes here because they think, "Hey, this is a country where I can raise my kids to be Americans, and they can have the American dream." Right? So how do we finally live up in the words of President Biden? How do we finally live up to the dream that we almost have been so close to attaining? Right? We want to be this greatest country in the world. We want to be the limelight, and I think we are an example for most of the world. How? How can we get there? And that's what I want to leave our viewers with. This one touches personal, right? This is another point. Honey Creek Elementary. We talked about this briefly before we started the Zoom call. I want to discreet my viewers be ready because this is insane to me. But Honey Creek Elementary, a school in Georgia, had colored only and white only signs up in their school. To give you context, because I know you're probably out of breath, the teacher's excuse or answer to the encounter of these signs was they were said to be a project to replicate a lesson about Ruby Bridges, a historical figure in the civil rights movement, one of the first kids to be integrated into a school. She had to walk to school. Um, But kids that were drinking from the water fountains below these signs, were not aware the signs were above them, were bullied. Went home and told their parents, and they went to the school board asking for an explanation. I saw the interview a couple days ago, Declan. The parents were afraid to show their faces in the interview. Um, I kind of talked with you and Ivor about this in DC. People don't realize how far the South is behind the rest of the country. Um, I don't want to sit here and say that we do have colored only and white only signs up in our bathrooms in our schools. We don't. But for this to happen, I assume there were paper signs because obviously that's our excuse that this was a replication. This is just unacceptable. There's no reason why. One, this should be re-implicated. You can teach a lesson without having to role play. Like I don't quite understand what's going on here. Um, but am I crazy? Like what are we doing?
Yeah. You mentioned this was an elementary school, right?
It's an element. This is not even a middle school. This is an elementary school. These
Yeah.
kids, I think they were. It's a fourth grade class.
Uh, it's like it's like one of those things you hear it, it's so shocking, you almost start laughing because you don't like you think there's no way this is real. Um, yeah. You know, you if you put elementary school students in that environment where you're tossing it up for them. You say, here, little kids who are just going to repeat whatever their parents' opinions are. Here, go yell slurs at other kids because they look different from you. The teacher just gave you ammunition. Like if
Yeah.
this lesson must be taught with these signs, do it to high schoolers. As high schoolers, at least you'd hope that high schoolers
But
are
good.
mature enough to understand what that must have felt like, and then being able to like actually digest information that you learn in class better.
I don't. You're right. Like you hear it and you're like, this has got to be like
Yeah.
a social experience. Like this has got
Gotta
to
be
be
like an
fake.
Onion article, huh?
Like, anyways, jeez. I don't want to touch more on that because it's so. I want to get all of the news out to our people because it's so important that the American people hear this stuff. But it's just so heart wrenching to think. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Um, it's so heart wrenching to to think this stuff is going on. Like in the United States of America, this stuff is going on currently. It's just it's heart wrenching. Um, Back to the topic of immigration, man. It's like it's all that's going on in our country. Border Patrol arrests a fire crew containing two immigrants cleaning up a wildfire in Washington State. So they see that this fire is going on. Of course, the fire crew and the firefighters rush to the forest to clean this up. And two of the members, I think it was two or three, are immigrants. Border Patrol rushes to the scene to pick them up. I think they are still detained. Like the limelight is, excuse me, the limelight is we're going after criminals. You touched on it earlier, bro. Like these are people who are doing the jobs that Americans don't want to take, right? Firefighters obviously is a different subject because there are a lot of Caucasian Americans who are in the firefighters along with African Americans, but just in a broader situation, like these are just people trying to make a living for their family, and even crazier, these people care,
Yeah.
right? It's not like no disrespect. Obviously, you still care about the American people in agriculture jobs and construction jobs, but
Yeah.
these people are cleaning up fires,
Yeah.
saving lives, and you're going and say, like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
It's just, it's, I don't even, like, I'm genuinely at a loss of words.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, especially with a lot of like combating, my God. Uh which one was it? Okay. Zoom wants to us to wrap this up within 9 minutes and 30 seconds. So,
Jeez. Okay, well, let's touch on some other points. Um, Back to just the, the, just the improvisation of rights. A veteran was detained outside of the White House burning the American flag. Jay Carey was his name. He's a veteran, ex-veteran, excuse me, and was taken away by officers as he told bystanders watching to not forget their freedom of speech and assembly rights under the First Amendment. Um, Currently being at risk under this administration. The Supreme Court has ruled recently that this subject of burning the flag is under the First Amendment right, as controversial as it is. But we've also seen them move with the tide from pressure from the Trump administration regarding the fact, as we discussed earlier, of immigration. Um, what are we thinking? Does this have an implication of the Supreme Court? Will this man get charged? Like what? Like what's going on?
yeah. One of the things that kind of learned with the American government is there will always be an excuse. Whether it's with the lady who snitched on Luigi Mangione at that one McDonald's, not getting the money from the tip line because she didn't specifically call them, or even stuff like this. There's always going to be an excuse for the government to screw you as it is currently. They're just their defense is gonna say, "Oh, but he could have potentially caused a fire all around." Like
Yeah,
in any other administration, that argument's not gonna be used, but that's just how it is right now. But I mean, that's my whole opinion, and it's crazy to think that literally like as of 2 months ago, we were literally in that exact spot he was standing. Um,
yeah, literally, yeah.
but yeah, that's all I gotta say. It's just they're always gonna find an excuse and they're gonna have an excuse, and I don't think I think unless the Supreme Court uh gets an expansion of their powers or decides to expand their powers, I don't think there's anything that can be done about it.
Sad as that is, we see the Supreme Court just bending a knee. It used to be where the courts were the highest in the land, or geez, it's like separation of branch of government, right? Separation of powers, the executive, the legislative, um, the judicial just kind of all floated together and they checked each other. Now it's just the executive sits at the top, and that's not how it should be. I'm going to throw the last 3 points at you. We know we got time to wrap up. I'm going to throw the last three at you. I'll let you summarize with all of them.
Yeah.
Speaking of the White House, the deployment of the National Guard. You were talking about 2 months ago. We were sitting in D.C., Georgetown specifically. We had a meeting on Georgetown Street, old Georgetown. I saw a video of National Guard troops walking on the same streets that we walked on. And now he is claiming to throw them into Chicago next. Governor Pritzker, who I'm a huge fan of, and the mayor of Chicago are saying we do not need it, right?
Yeah.
So that's just another improvisation, another step um, on power from the Trump administration. Nayib Bukele, the president and now controversial dictator of El Salvador, has recently proposed a notion similar to the EU. He wants all Central American countries, 15 of them, to become one and operate under one shield of influence. So that is also a controversial idea. Costa Rica and Panama have already declined and said, no, we will not be part of this if you do choose to pursue this in the future. And finally, Trump's cuts. We've seen, the Sesame Street. I grew up on the Sesame Street, watching Sesame
Me
Street,
too.
Dora, all
Yeah.
that stuff. He's cut PBS over the last couple months and started to do it towards the end of his first administration, removing funds from 500 media outlets. The fake news, right?
Fake
Has been
news.
fake news has been replaced by PragerU, a conservative nonprofit known for ideological and historical sensitive and questionable series. Because of leaders like DeSantis, we've seen some controversial moves of removing books in his home state. And also the state of Oklahoma, they've been trying to put up, not Constitution, excuse me, the Ten Commandments in their classrooms, all of their classrooms, mandating that. Oklahoma and Florida are both of the first two states to push this series of, um, excuse me, Christopher Columbus. I will post the clip on our Instagram, but there is a clip of Christopher Columbus discussing how slavery was not all that bad. I sent that to you the other day, Mr. Secretary.
We
Um,
had a conversation about that, which is
we
it's
we
especially ironic considering that mothers would literally throw their babies off born so they wouldn't have to be slaves. But you know,
that's a topic for another time, right? We don't. Yeah. It's not that bad though. Um, Talk to me, summarize for me, wrap this up because I know the American people want to hear from you. Where are we like Trump's cuts, Central America conflicts? We kind of talked about Maduro and the pressure that he's putting on. I don't know if we actually talked about that. Trump has sent the Navy this morning to the coast of Venezuela to put pressure on Maduro. Is it bluff? Is he really going to do something? There's so much going on. Summarize for me.
yeah, just we're gonna talk, just gonna sum up foreign relations real quick. Um, I think whether it is a bluff or not, it is still obviously it's concerning, but I think to an extent there's only so much that talking about it will do. I think, even though Trump doesn't seem to respect the order of power in the American government, he is still the commander in chief of the U.S. military, and it is his right to temporarily engage in warfare activities for up to 90 days, I believe. But it is otherwise, you know, it's concerning, and I hope Congress will stop delayed, prolonged warfare if it does come to that. But if
Yeah.
they don't, then I guess we'll be talking about this another few months right back on here.
Yeah.
Um, and then just kind of talking about like journalism and then that kind of TV stuff with PBS and all that. Uh, there's a saying that the highest praise in journalism is being killed by the government of whatever country you're in. And whether it's literally being killed or not, um, being shut down means you are telling the truth to a certain extent with a lot of governments these days. So, you know, I hope we get to talk about PragerU another time because I would love to talk all about that one. But
Yeah.
I just hope PBS will find a way, whether we, just as the American people, we can kind of like crowdfund it.
Yeah.
But, it's concerning. It's definitely going to add to the political affiliation gap between levels of education. But other than that, kind of really got much else to say about it. If you're busy right now, I can just quickly wrap this up. Uh, thank you for your time, everyone. Uh, Again, my name's Declan Meyer. I'm from Gladstone, New Jersey. I'm a defensive lineman on the Burns Mountaineers. I'm an up-and-coming politician. I enjoyed speaking with you, Isaiah, again. It's been a while since we had a long conversation like this, just one-on-one. But I'll leave it to you there. Hope nothing crazy happens within the next 24
No,
hours
Missy,
between
stop.
us recording this and like uploading it.
Yeah, I just kind of want to touch on that. Missy, stop. It's been crazy. Yeah, the stuff that's been going on in our country so far. I think it's critical that we do continue to touch on these things and speak with the American people. So we hope that you guys will tap in with us. It is so critical to hear this news, hear the real stuff, nonpartisan stuff coming out of the Next Up Coalition. We hope that you will follow along our Instagram and keep in touch with us. From Isaiah Randolph and Declan Meyer, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next week.